Have you ever tried to explain to anyone what was happening in your relationship? Why you know something's wrong, but the words just fall apart and you feel like a complete idiot when they do? Stay with me and I'll explain to you why. And heads up, it's not that you don't have the words, but because that's what coercive abuse does to your mind. That's not you failing to describe it. It's just simply what coercive abuse does to all of us. So here in Australia, we have reasonably new laws in some of our states that now criminalise coercive control in relationships. New South Wales was first in 2024. Queensland followed last year. More states are coming into line with the ACT laws starting this year. And if you're watching from the UK, well, you've definitely led the way with similar legislation coming into effect in 2015 in England and Wales and 2018 in Scotland. The Canadians watching, I believe there is draft legislation being considered at a federal level. Unfortunately, in the US, there's no federal standalone coercive control offence recognised, with the Violence Against Women Act criminalising physical violence only at this time. Although, let me know in the comments if you have anything in the works to recognise and prevent coercive control. I recall that Hawaii had a standalone provision, but that it was classified as a petty misdemeanour only, but at least it's a start. And if you are watching from the US or from anywhere else, just stay with me, because regardless of whether there's a crime defining coercive control, it's important that we all learn to recognise the patterns that make it up to protect ourselves and our daughters from people that use it when they're trying to control or to harm us. Now, last year, where I live in New South Wales in Australia, police have recorded 297 reported incidents under the new law since it came into effect in 2024. That's 297 people. Likely to be largely women, as we know that 27% of women experience some form of abuse by a partner once they're over the age of 15 in Australia, compared to 15% of men, according to data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So that's 2 women to every 1 man. Or if we look purely at where the abuse is physical or sexual in nature, then it becomes 3 women to every 1 man. So those gender differences are pretty consistent across the UK, Canada and the US as well. Now, out of those 297 reports of coercive control, only 9 charges were laid. That's 9 charges out of 297 reports. So what's going wrong? Well, it's not because police don't care enough, but because coercive control doesn't actually leave a single obvious mark. It's a pattern, and patterns are harder to evidence. But the law actually, and fairly reasonably, requires proof of an offence. And for coercive abuse, that means police have to establish that a pattern of coercion exists across time. The problem is that most women can't provide that when they have first contact with police, and there's a specific reason why. So there's 2 issues here. The laws require proof that a course of coercive conduct must be established. And most women struggle to see the pattern of coercive abuse while they're still living inside it, and often even after the relationship ends. In case you haven't come across what the concept of coercive control actually means or how it's defined as a crime, here's a quick rundown, and also a quick side note. The description I'm giving you is based largely on Australian criminal codes, so you'd need to check what they are in your area if they exist. And if you're in the UK, I believe they're similar, but there are some slight differences in wording, even across Scotland and England. Essentially, it's any abusive behaviour by an intimate partner, whether current or former. And that includes married, de facto, separated, divorced, and also dating relationships. So notice there's no requirement to actually be living together. And the behaviours by that partner can be either physical in nature, sexual, emotional, psychological, financial, or threats. And that's threats that are either implied, hinted at, or explicitly made. But rather than being a one-off abusive or harmful behaviour, it's a repeated and continuous pattern of specific types of behaviour during the relationship. Now, there's no time frame for the behaviours or patterns to have occurred, and there's no minimum number of incidents that the law even specifies. So that means if any of these behaviours happen more than once, it could be considered to be a pattern. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean 2 of the same behaviour, but 2 of any type of abusive behaviour. So what exactly does make it abusive? 2 things. that it was either likely to or did cause you fear, or that the behaviours had a harmful impact on you to be able to carry out your day-to-day activities that you would usually do. And, now this is the challenging one, police in Australia have to prove that a partner intended to coerce you, which simply means to manipulate, pressure, force, or to control you with their behaviour. So we're not just talking about an angry reaction here after an argument or carelessness. We're talking about that your partner intended to make you do something, to control what you thought, felt, or did. Now, this is where most of us become stuck. It's pretty straightforward to establish a pattern from, say, a threat to hurt you if you leave, to his intention to control you and to stop you leaving when there's physical evidence or an injury, right? It's also possible for police to recognise a pattern when a woman doesn't try to leave but reports that the same threat happened, along with her description of feeling scared that if she did try to leave, that she'd be hurt. But what happens when a partner has a habit of ignoring you when you do something he doesn't like, say going out with friends, and eventually you stop catching up with those friends because it's just too hard? Or when you ask him to help out with something at home and he doesn't want to do it, and so he calls you a nag and tells you that you've really let yourself go since having a baby, and then later mentions how attractive his colleague is since she's been working out. So you end up worrying that if you ask for anything in future, he might leave you. And despite feeling exhausted, you end up trying to work out around your baby's feeding times, as well as doing everything yourself rather than asking him next time. So would either of those examples be considered a crime? In isolation, no. But add them together and there's a pattern. In both examples, the partner intentionally does or says something to control you. In the first example, the ignoring or stonewalling or avoidant behaviour, as it's sometimes referred to, is intentionally designed to prevent you from doing something that he didn't want you to do. No physical force required. You seemingly choose to do it of your own volition. You're just working on keeping a harmonious relationship, right? And yes, that's likely true. But it's also true that the partner in those examples is using coercive control to manipulate your freedom of choice and your independence. And each time he proves that using coercive control is effective in making you do what he wants you to do without needing to even tell you or force you. And in the second example, it's exactly the same. You ask, he says something that on the surface seems insensitive at worst, but when viewed as a pattern of behaviour, it's designed to gradually mould your behaviour to stop you asking for something he doesn't want to give. And again, on the surface, perhaps he's just being an asshole. But if both behaviours were by the same partner, it could be an emerging pattern of coercive abuse. Now, these seemingly minor events tend to go unnoticed, or they don't seem big enough to be concerned about at the time. But we should. Because over time, each of these seemingly small incidents of control, they add up and they lead to significant psychological, emotional and physical harm to you. So why can't you see it? Well, coercive abuse works by reshaping how you interpret your own experience. It's not one event, it's 100 small things across every part of your life. Money, friends, how you spend your time, how you see yourself. Each thing on its own seems like nothing, or it feels like you're overreacting. And that's not an accident. That is the pattern of coercive control. Living with ongoing coercive abuse, it changes how your memory works. Not because you're weak, because chronic threat does measurable things to the brain that makes it harder to store and recall events in sequence. This is why the women that I've worked with have often said to me, I know something's wrong, but I can't explain it. And why when they try to explain it to police or family or friends, it falls apart. Some women have partners who go through men's behaviour change programs, usually after police or the courts have been involved, or there's some other potential loss of a job or a relationship that they want to hold on to. Sometimes the obvious behaviour stops, but the control and the psychological harm often doesn't. Maybe the name calling or yelling stops, but the gaslighting increases. Suddenly your car keys are missing, and when you find them in a place you know you didn't leave them, he blames your bad memory. And so you start to doubt yourself. The control behaviours are still there. They just get more subtle, covert, harder to name, more deniable. And that's often more confusing when you're living with it, not less. Because now you can't even point to the thing that was happening before. And after all, He's trying. Now, if any of this sounds familiar about your relationship or a past one, I'd love for you to let me know what you've noticed in your relationship. Have you noticed the patterns? Have you tried to explain them to others, to police? Okay, so let me ask you this. What would change if the pattern became visible to you before you're in crisis or before you've experienced so much psychological abuse that you no longer know who you are anymore? Let me tell you what I've learned over the last 25 years of supporting women through the recovery after coercive abuse and from my own experiences of recovery. You'd stop trying to explain a feeling and instead you'd start tracking what's actually happening across the parts of your life that are being controlled: money, social connections, information you were given or kept from, your physical freedom, your sense of what's real. You'd end up confirming to yourself, regardless of anyone else, that the feeling you had that something was wrong or that something's wrong with you has a direct connection to coercive abuse. And when you see the pattern, you have the language, and language changes what you can do next. And that is exactly why I developed relationship clarity mapping. Not for therapy, not for advice, but to give women experiencing confusion over an unpredictable or a volatile relationship a structured way of observing and recording what's happening inside her relationship, so you can see it yourself, and so you can have a record of the patterns if you decide that you want or need one. It's for women who suspect that something's wrong, for those who can feel it and are trying everywhere to look for the answers. Women who have tried to describe it and been told by their partners, friends, or even police that they are overreacting. You know that you're not. If you can feel it, trust the gut. Now, if any of this resonates, if you've been trying to name something that you can't quite name, the Relationship Clarity Mapping online program is releasing through Wise Woman Studio in June. And if you're interested in learning how to recognise and track coercive abuse, you can subscribe at wisewomanstudio.com. The link's in the description. And then you'll be the first to know when it's available. Now, regardless of whether you do, I hope that you'll join me next time for more on recognising and mapping coercive abuse. Take care.